So we had Professor Yeshayahu Leibovitz. He had a problem with this notion of chosen nation, and I read once one of his disciples in his book. He says that after the Holocaust, we have to be more careful. He argues that we have to eliminate, not to talk about this idea of chosen nation after the Holocaust, when the Nazis used a similar idea of in order to eliminate us, because they also came with some kind of this Aubermensch, right? From Nietzsche, you have the Adam HaElyon, the Aubermensch. There's even Israeli scholars who are talking about the parallels between Nietzsche's Aubermensch and the Adam HaElyon, what we have in Hasidism, this idea, this type of idea. So I wonder what you think about it.
So I think the notion of chosenness, from a Torah perspective, the notion of Bachar seems more like chosen with a purpose instead of chosen blindly, which is what's taught nowadays. It's like you could be an atheist and halakhically Jewish, and people still think that you're part of the chosen people. I'm not such a big fan of the Zohar, but the Zohar makes a statement that it was actually Abraham who chose God and not the other way around. And that's actually a little truer to the text. If you choose someone, you're not going to then test them to figure out if they're sincere or not. If it's chosenness in the way that's taught nowadays, you think, well, it doesn't matter if he's tested or not. No, if someone's being tested, that means we're seeing if they fail these tests, then they are no longer chosen. So chosenness actually means that God gives us the opportunity to do the right thing. But it's just taught differently nowadays, and this is why the notion of Ubermensch, even by Jews, is taught, like the idea of Helek Elokami Mal Mamish, that every Jew is like inherently special versus Gentiles. And this is the first two chapters of the Tanya that teach that the souls of Gentiles come from the Sitrachra, from the unclean Klipot. These aren't ideas that I see predominantly in the 5 books of Moses. They seem more like developed ideas. Also, in the 5 books of Moses, we have the notion of karet. To be like karet means that you're cut off. So on a plain level understanding, it seems that if we were really just chosen just because we are in some way inherently superior to other people, then here it shows that you can be cut off from your people. That's what it says. You shall be cut off from your people if you do any national sins like eating chametz. And by the simple fact that converts could be let in, it shows that there is no notion of chosenness in the way that we understand it. Even during the Pesach Seder and the Haggadah, we tell the evil child that if he was in Egypt, he wouldn't have been redeemed. This notion of inherent merit is not one that appears in the Torah. And even the rabbis teach that the vast majority of Jews stayed behind in Egypt, the vast majority of Jews stayed behind in Babel. And it was always a cry for whoever wanted to follow God, please come. And this is why we had the Erev Rav, and there's 2 narratives of the Erev Rav. One narrative is that they were wonderful people, and there's one narrative, another medrash, that says they're not. Right? But according to the Torah, they were on the same level as those with the Abrahamic pedigree. I think the idea of chosenhood has hurt us more than it's helped us, because it hasn't been taught in a responsible manner, that God doesn't just respect people because of who they happen to be descended from or related to, that we all distinguish ourselves by our actions and our deeds, and that's how God rewards us.
Thank you so much. Yes, we talked about that earlier, and I think that you put it wonderfully. But that's your interpretation. That's my interpretation, Rabbi. We're in the same boat about it.
Thanks, Rabbi. In the 19th century, the Maskilim had a big problem with the idea of chosen nation. So, for example, the greatest Hebrew poet of the generation is still very famous. Still, there are streets on his name in Israel. Was named Yehuda Leib Gordon, also known as Yalag, and he had a brother-in-law who actually made him for a maskil in the first place, older brother-in-law with the name Michel Gordon. And Michel Gordon was a poet not in Hebrew but in Yiddish. And one of his poems, he talks about the chosen nation, and he says, and he says the Ata B'chatanu, the chosen nation idea, didn't bring you any good. He talks like to the Jew, and